ho, ho, taking a break from the campaign trail because this is 2-on-1, the internet's only talk show about everything, specifically this week, pop culture and theology. Hi, I'm one of your co-ho-ho-hosts, Arthur Stewart.
I don't know that I want to call myself a ho-ho-host.
Okay, you don't have to, it's a free country.
But I will. I'm your other co-host, Stephanie Kendall.
Oh, it's the most wonderful.
We're already off to a great start, my friend.
If it's the most wonderful time of the year, it's Advent, which of course is the season that if we're not in, we're talking about all the time. Happy Advent.
We made it.
We made it.
We continue to talk about Advent, even, in like, we're either post-Advent, our liturgical calendar is like 2 seasons, or I guess 3 seasons, pre-Advent, Advent, and post-Advent.
It's just Advent or not. I mean, we even did Advent in July this year, so like we're good. Well, hey, for Christmas, which is coming up shortly, is there anything on your list?
What is on my list? My list is, I'm really excited because this year, I'm gonna go home for Christmas. And I get to see my family. And I thought that that ship had sailed as the person in my family that doesn't live in the same area as the rest of my family, and as the one person that works on Christmas. I'd kind of made my peace with that. But we are a congregation that is still online, and for lots of different reasons. And I'm really excited that with my congregation's blessing, I'm going to lead worship as I would have just from this space in my home. I'm going to lead it from my parents' house and get to see everyone and go home. So my Christmas list is small, just that I get to spend time with my family and my niece. So what about you?
I mean, what a great bonus for a really challenging season, because we're not doing it. I have to turn around and do worship on Sunday morning, and Christmas Eve is a Friday night this year, so it's
a lot of worship in a weekend. It's a lot of
and Brian's still not over the whole I married a pastor thing, so he's a little heartbroken, and I get it. But on my Christmas list, I've asked for 2 things, and this is why I'm the coolest guy in the world. I've asked for a really nice chess set and the Edith Grossman translation of Don Quixote, because it's hilarious.
You know what, you could add a third there, Arthur.
I actually was going to bring that up, because my third thing on my Christmas list, which I'm going to add and let Santa know right now, is a stole from Jeff One-Row Designs.
I mean, Jeff One-Row has spent 16 years making Ordinary Time extraordinary and Advent adventurous, and what's the other one that you said?
Making the season of Epiphany epic.
Oh, that's right. There you go. But I was just thinking,
and he's celebrating the 12 days of Yasmas. I don't know. I'll work on that.
For those listening to this, silence of Swift shaking her head. No, but I was on Jeff's Instagram last night and just kind of scrolling through, and really excited about all the things that he is doing, especially for this time. Friends, there's still time to get your Jeff One-Row stole, to order it now in time for the holidays, for the clergy person in your life, or maybe it's for yourself if you were like me and generally spend the holidays by yourself. It's not sad, it's okay. I don't spend it by myself. I spend it with community, just not with my family.
I wish Wichita were not a non-hub, because it'd be nice. You could fly to California but stop in Wichita for a few days, and we would totally
absolutely
have fun. And you could have spotty internet at my house for Christmas Eve
instead of spotty internet at my house in New York. But going back, you can still get your stoles. I could have been your Santa and dropped off your Jeff One-Row stole. Well,
Jeff One-Row stoles are handmade in St. Louis, Missouri by a team of folk who really have been spending the last 16 years making Ordinary Time extraordinary. You've heard us say it 1,000 times before, and you may hear us say it a few more times. Jeff One-Row, JEFFWUNROW.com. Check out their entire catalog of stoles, paraments, frontals, banners, paraments, really anything that you need church textile wise, Jeff One Row Designs has got you covered, literally.
And exactly. And for our deuces out there, you know that you have a special promo code that is good just to the end of the year, friends. So literally get your orders in now, which is 2-on-1, all letters, no numbers, just 2-on-1. But make sure you do it at checkout. I was on it again as I put things in my cart, as I am wont to do, as I am perusing websites. And I'm, Apple has me trained, that Apple Pay is real easy to just be like, and here you go, or PayPal, or whatever it is that you use, Google Wallet, or is that what it's called? Google Pay, Google Wallet, all those things. They kind of have a setup for, the quick experience of shopping.
Right.
And that makes it really easy. But there's just one little extra step. So you put it in your cart and then you say, go to checkout rather than like immediately checkout. And there's an option that says, do you have a coupon code? And you do. 2-on-1 gets you 15% off your entire store order.
So this is seriously the best coupon you're going to get for Jeff One Row Designs, and it's only good through the end of 2021. So now's the time. And if you're thinking I'm going to do it later, you're in the season of Advent, and Advent's time is like dilated, so it's going to go really fast. Do it right now. Don't pause the show. Wait till the show is over and go to jeffwonrow.com, JEFFWUNROW. And definitely check them out after the show. We thank Jeff One Row Designs for being our lead sponsor on 2-on-1, and use the code.
Do it.
The co-ho-ho-hoed. Again, it's not the silence is intentional, I suppose. Okay, so Spiff, we are talking about the most wonderful time of the year with the movie Happiest Season and the Reverend Sara Nave Fisher.
And with one of our favorite guests of 2-on-1.
Well, here she comes.
Of the year, but of all years.
Hello, Sara. Welcome back to 2-on-1. We're glad you're here.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas.
You are in your office space. I know this because I am tracking you.
If the NSA can do it, so can I.
Merry Christmas.
As it is Santa's wont to do. Sara, good to see you. We were talking about earlier, you've joined the Four Timers Club.
Which I believe is just Quadri, Harris, Whitney Waller, and you.
Ooh, it's a race to 5.
It's a race to 5.
Race to 5. And I think Quadri's a 3, maybe Quadri's, is it all 8s? It might be all 8s, which is a thing.
I mean, that tracks.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to make it in like Suzanne Stabile's next book, but.
You never know. Yeah. Don't minimize her that way.
I'm her
start tweeting her every day.
I have that in writing. I am Suzanne Stabile's 5th favorite 7. Sara Nave Fisher, you've chosen Happiest Season. So I'm going to do that thing where I briefly summarize it. For those of you who have not seen it, it is available on a certain streaming platform, the green one. It's am I allowed to say
holiday themed? It's not the red one, it's the green one.
The green one. It is the story of 2 women, Harper and Abby. Abby is going home with Harper for the holidays, but Harper has not come out to her how do you do hoity-toity family, and she hides her relationship with Abby, and both comedy and tragedy abound. Eventually there's a fist fight at a Christmas party, and spoiler alert, it all works out. Kind of. It all becomes more authentic. It's a great film. Dan Levy is in it, probably just saying, I'm going to do this now, so write it out. Like he was just off Schitt's Creek. He could do literally no wrong, and he didn't in this film. Sara, why did you pick this movie?
I picked this movie because I love Christmas movies. I inherited a deep and profound love of all things Christmas from my grandmother, and I love how like formulaic of a Christmas movie this is, and yet it's about a queer couple, which for me is just like all of the best things. It is indeed the happiest season.
Well, and they didn't do the thing I thought they were going to do, which was, of course, Abby was going to sleep with Riley. Riley is Harper's ex, played by Aubrey Plaza in the least weird acting she's ever done in her life.
It's the most of it's such an odd character choice, or odd character for her, because you're used to her saying the weird, quirky things, and she really kind of, for lack of a better term, shows up as the straight man in this space. It works. It lends itself well to the conversations that need to be had between Harper and Abby, I think.
But otherwise, yeah, it's a holiday movie. It all worked out. Mazel tov. I think that really leads into my first question. So we're in the season of Advent right now. We're coming up on Christmas, and something I struggle with every single year, no matter how much I talk about Advent, which is literally all the time,
daily,
I struggle with Advent because hope, peace, joy, and love, and then Christmas, there's nothing new under the sun. Like, it's really hard to mess up Christmas Eve. It's almost impossible. Almost. But what I guess the question is, like, why should we do Advent every year? Like, what's really the important part of it? What are we really preparing for, except just to bust out those moldy ass banners that you haven't bought from Jeff Warner Designs? Jeff Warner Designs does do banners and can get yours to you soon. Ship now. Buy stalls at jeffwarner.com.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
I just want our sponsor to understand we're not calling his work moldy ass. Anyways, Advent. Why?
Yeah, so I also struggle with Advent. I did not grow up honoring and celebrating Advent. So I have very, I would say mixed, but I would say it's not mixed feelings. It's just a lot of different layers of feelings that I hold tension and space for all at once, which is, I believe that we can wholeheartedly, especially in worship, prepare and have and honor this season of preparation. For me, the season of Advent is it's very much about recognizing that who we are as humanity is lacking. And I think that there is space for both that and joy simultaneously. So I don't mind personally living into both Advent and recognizing that liturgically we're not in the Christmas season yet, still sprinkling in some of the joy. Because you know what, life is hard and things are difficult, especially now. And having some joy where we can find it, I think is a good thing.
I don't know if you listen to a lot of David Byrne.
I do not.
Talking to Micah Busey of, God, forever ago, but it feels like only a few weeks ago. And Micah talked about there's almost the spectrum between doom and joy. And I heard what you said and thought, oh, we're back there.
Yeah.
Which is why, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I was just going to say that the longest night service is actually one of my favorite, which for me encapsulates both of these. And when I have been in church leadership before, we don't actually do it on the longest night, which just because it's so busy, but actually leading into kind of the holiday season is a space to name that it is not always joyful.
So for our listeners who may be from different traditions who haven't picked up Longest Night or Blue Christmas, would you just explain what that is real fast?
Yeah, it is traditionally held on the longest night of the year, which would be December 22nd, 23rd.
It's the 20th or the 21st.
Okay. See, I don't usually do it on that day, but it is the longest night of the year, the solstice, correct?
Yeah.
See, you asked me to do it. And a lot traditionally, also sometimes, as you said, called a Blue Christmas service. It's a way to name that even in the midst of such joy, we all bear grief and we all bear suffering. And there is death, even in the midst of joy and resurrection and new birth and all of those things. And as people of faith, as Christians, we recognize that all of those things are a part of the human experience.
Yeah, I like the long night services too. And I will say I like Advent. And I think it's because for me, it gives me the opportunity to reflect on what is new about the coming Christmas, about what is new about this new birth, about this new life that we are, and this new year that we are on the precipice of. As you know, every year as I too grew up outside of the church. Well, outside of, I didn't do Advent growing up for different reasons than Sarah, as y'all, one day you'll just have to listen to Sarah and I talk just as friends, and that's a podcast in and of itself. But yeah, we didn't do it. And I have really come to enjoy that time of preparation, that time of reflection that says, like, here, what does it mean for hope out of this year? It doesn't seem so rote for me because well, I don't know, it just doesn't, because I use it as a part of my own process of reflection of where did I find hope, where did I find peace, where did I find joy. But I will also name why I think I like Longest Night within that spectrum of Advent and preparation is the different communities that I have served, and whether or not they do or don't do Longest Night. but like how grief shows up for different people in different communities, especially in this season. So as we know, the not care for birthing Black women or Black people well. And there is a racism disparity within our healthcare system. And so as we prepare for the coming of a new child and, you know, a new Christ child in Black and brown communities that I have served, a lot of grief happens around birthing trauma and loss of child in that way. And yet in some white communities, it's grief around lots of other different things. And so the Advent season for me has been a helpful time in which to place my own self in the conversation, but also see it within the specs of wider community, and how might the coming of Christ and this new child on Christmas that we anticipate, that seems a little you know, the same every year, also offers a new space to start from.
I like it. So
sorry, not to go like real.
No, that's, I mean, I always love it when we go to infant mortality in the first 10 minutes of the show. It's especially at Christmas time, but it's an important part because it really is. And part of what happens with the Happiest season is like it gets starkly intense. And I actually would love to talk about this more in the whole queer side of it, because the plot point really is that Harper understands her family well enough that she cannot come out as a lesbian. And I find it fascinating because in the movie, her older sister Sloane, who, oh my God, must have followed my sister around to get her character. It was terrifying. Her older sister Sloane is married to a Black man. And obviously interracial marriage is not problematic in any way, shape, or form. But if they're talking about quote unquote socially conservative, which is obnoxiously traditional, which is really hegemonic towards heteroorthodoxy and whiteness, that one is not even an issue and the other one is, felt odd to me.
I do wonder, and I wondered if, because you're right, they sort of gloss over I can't even remember what his name is, Sloane's husband.
Eric.
He also was a lawyer. And so I wonder how that would have been perceived differently by a family that cares so much about perception. Incidentally, they don't seem to be a very religious family. So it does not seem to be as though there's a theological issue here, but as a family who is deeply entrenched in perception and outsider perception. Because clearly the issue they have with Sloane and Eric is not their marriage or their relationship. It's that they left working in law. And so I do think that's, I would love to see a second movie maybe where they explore some of those other characters.
Well, because before I just want to name for those that haven't seen this movie, and y'all should actually see it, the dad is running for office. And so that's where the perception is with all of this and what it means to kind of present one's best self at this time of year. The mom the mom who is played by Mary Steenburgen, it keeps trying to get a family photo. And so like that's like perception and what we put out of ourselves is a big theme for this. So
can we just talk about Tipper for 1 second, and then we can go back to like the underlying queer themes, because at one point Abby, played by Kristen Stewart, who does a marvelous job, and it turns out Kristen Stewart's a great actress. She does the script that's in front of her. Anyways, Tipper, played by Mary Steenburgen. Abby comes in with their white elephant gift and she goes, "Where should I put it?" And she goes, "In the oven." Jesus, Abby, where do you think? Under the
No one is acting in their best self in that moment.
No, and later she meets, Dan Levy's all-knowing, all-powerful character, and he's like, "She is wonderful," and she is wonderful. Anyways, okay, with queer self and hiding out on it. Heteronormativity is a hell of a drug. And appearing hetero-orthodox is a hell of a drug. And as a gay man who passes for straight or who is assumed straight in a lot of situations, it is very convenient. It is, and that's all it is. It's not authentic, it's not helpful, it's not honest, it's not useful, it's not true to who I am, but it's super convenient. And if you need to think I'm straight in order to change my oil faster, I'm probably going to let you. Or rather to not mess with my car, or to, get work. Like, I don't know. I feel for Harper, and I also think Abby should have dumped her ass. So,
Well, one of the things that stuck out to me was at the beginning, Harper's almost evangelistic tone that she took, which really mirrors how people talk about queer people coming into the church, right? Well, just come with me and see. And even though you can't really be who you are fully, just come with me and we'll love you.
We'll love on you.
We'll love on you. Without recognizing that someone not living as their whole self cannot really fully enter into a loving relationship. But this level of like, well, just come and see, and you'll love Christmas. It's all under the guise of loving Christmas, but of course, family and coming out and all of this is interwoven in it.
And it's an invitation to be shallow as opposed to deep. And I'll go back to it. It's a temptation to be shallow. And perhaps sometimes in churches, we invite people to be shallow and just be on the surface.
Which I think goes back to your question of why Advent is important. And, Christmas, we can invite people into Christmas a lot easier than we can invite them into Advent, which is why I think I love living into Christmas the entire month of December in my own life. And I still want my worship to be Advent, because that is where there is a complexity to that is true of faith. But it's really fun to invite people to Santa.
Well, did you see there's a piece of art where somebody took the old Trinity thing where it's the 3 bulbs, and it's, God is, and it's the old school language, which is so limiting, but all language about God is limiting, but God is Father, God is Son, God is Holy Spirit, God is not, like the is not connects it, but it was Christmas is nativity, Advent, and Epiphany, and it's also not those things. Like their claim is sing Christmas songs whenever you want, keep your tree up as long as you need to, stop being Arthur Stewart and insisting we only sing Advent songs in minor keys till the 24th.
Well, and this is really helpful conversation.
Was that it, Spiff? Was that the what the hell question of the never mind.
No, but I might even know what the hell side note. No, it tracks, it does. But it was helpful how you're kind of putting it all. It is and it isn't, what is authentic and what is not, what is Christmas and what is it, what is Jesus and what is Santa, all of those things, right? And the question can be like, okay, well, what does this movie have to teach the church in this season? And I think so much of it is, we say at the end, yes, this does all work out for Harper and Abby, but there's a risk that happens there. And I think for my friends that are queer, who are trying to come back into church, who have a lot of religious trauma, who may be wanting to go back into church, who may not, but like there's risk there that, may not work out in the end, or coming out to your family may not work out in the end. And so there is the risk that is held there. And I think we're just going kind of back to what does it mean to both hold the tension of anticipation and grief, and anticipation and joy in the same setting. And I'm wondering if either of you found that to be true, if the going home for this family thing rings true in either your own experiences or those that for the church, for the coming back to church, especially because we have a tendency as people writ large to say, come with me to Christmas, come with me to Easter. We're not just saying, come with me on July 17th to church, right? And like, check out who this church is in its everydayness.
If somebody invites you to church around the first weekend of July, don't go.
Well, that's a different thing. But you know what I meant, like, who are you when you're not, performing in these big Sundays and whatever, or big holiday seasons? And who is this family when he's not running for office, when he's not, when they're not trying to get the family photo that goes out and said, this is the candidate and their people.
I don't think that family has existed for a long time, is kind of the implication in the movie. Like, the divorce started happening years before between Eric and I'm sorry, you're our guest, and like I'm answering questions first. I beg your pardon.
I'm enjoying conversation. Go ahead.
That's Eric and Sloane's thing. Like the whole, Jane, we gave up on her after she wouldn't stop biting in preschool. Jane's the best character in modern movies. Like, I would just watch Jane movies forever. I want to read the book she wrote. I mean, how convenient is it that Dan Levy happens to be a publisher? Sorry, Christmas movie magic still annoys me.
No, but you saying that the family hadn't been the family in a long time. I think what I'm trying to say is the church hasn't been the church in a long time.
The church hasn't been the church in a long time. And what the church needs is a fist fight to break out during the nativity play. And maybe I mean an actual fist fight. Not an actual fist fight, but what we need is everything to go wrong, and all of the choreography to be thrown off, and all of the facades to get torn down, and all of the banners, if they're not made by Jeff Wano Designs, to catch on fire. And we need collapse, because maybe that's my problem with Advent. There's not a lot of room for death that leads to resurrection in Advent. There's mystery and there's depth and there's shadow, but there's not necessarily death.
Sarah?
Yes, no, my mind is working in like 6 different trains of thought right now. And I thought that I knew what I was going to say next until Arthur just said that.
Welcome to the South.
I mean, I would say that there is death in that anytime there is something new, something else has ended inherently. And so even with a new life, there is a death of the way it was before. And I think that is definitely true in the church. What was interesting is watching this with my kids this weekend. So I watched it last Advent season, last year when it came out, and then just again recently with my kids, and they were very distraught that it ended, that it ended so happily, so quickly. They felt like that was very inauthentic. And of course, I also recognize that is part of what makes a Christmas movie, right? We don't watch Christmas movies to mourn, right? We watch Christmas movies for the happy ending, and we expect that they'll be there. I feel like I remember reading an interview with one of the writers or producers who talked about how that was an intentional decision, because so many queer people have not had that happy ending, that they needed to see it on screen. So even though this very clearly does not take place, in the Schitt's Creek universe where sexuality is not an issue, it obviously doesn't take place in that universe, and yet it shows us what could be. And I think that in that way it's a hopeful imagination of what the world could be, where you go from a fist fight on Christmas Eve to Christmas morning, you wake up and the family all suddenly they decide to make it all work.
And dad passes up running for office because he doesn't want to tell his daughter, who literally just came out, to go back into the closet.
He passes up funding.
Yes.
He still runs. I think. Yeah, he just passes up the funding.
Did you watch the end credits?
No, I didn't.
The end credits. So did you watch? I again, 2-on-1 is a spoiler show. We all know this. There's the 1 year later.
Yeah. 1 year later, where they go to see the worst movie ever made, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes. And then if you keep watching, it goes through the following year's Instagram, Tipper's Instagram for the next year. So
I'm changing my name to that.
That is key, is knowing the things that happen after that.
Yes. And that life goes on, like it does offer a certain amount of hope, right? That life does go on. You can survive some of the scariest things in your life, and you can survive the stresses that come and all of that. And yet again, it's a Christmas movie, so we can caveat it with that like we're going to end on a happy note, and that it won't always work out for every person that way, and yet we hope.
I cried a little when Dan Levy, I don't know why I keep calling him Dan Levy. He has a character name. The character name is John. John said that he didn't speak to his dad for 13 years after he came out. And the implication is that he has. I also immediately thought, why would Eugene Levy do that? But it obviously it may not have. Anyways, but it broke my heart on that because it is the coming out sucks and being out sucks. And it kind of comes back to that shallow thing of it's much easier to just be normative and be orthodox and get away with it. And there was an instance, I won't go into specifics of it, but basically people said that they did not want to be in a relationship with me because I was gay. And I went back and I was like, God, it's 2021. Like, I'm past it. Why isn't everyone else past it? And this movie, for being a Christmas movie and kind of having that Christmas fluff, also had some really sharp edges.
I actually wrote down John's quote. Can I read it?
Please do.
Okay. So this is when sort of everything in the movie, there's a climax. We don't know if Abby and Harper are going to stay together. And here's what John says. Everybody's story is different. There's your version, which went well, and my version and everything in between. But the one thing all of those stories have in common is that moment right before you say those words, when your heart is racing and you don't know what's coming next. That moment's really terrifying. And once you say those words, you can't unsay them. A chapter has ended, a new one's begun. You have to be ready for that. You can't do it for anyone else. And that is what John tells Abby as she's figuring out, do I hold it against Harper that she has not come out to her family? How do we move forward from this? And the first time I watched this movie, I sort of wanted Abby to break up with Harper. And then on rewatching it, I had a lot more compassion for Harper's character. And I appreciated John saying that. And I think that's what the church can learn, is that there isn't one version to any story.
Well, I mean, so a while ago, we had on All Saints, we did a memorial service, and we made it a point to say we're naming people who died in basically since I've arrived, but 2019, 2020, 2021, because it was from All Saints 2019, essentially. And we sent out letters and we made a big statement about it. And all these people showed up, including some people from this congregation who left before my first Sunday, because when I was called, they were very clear that I have a husband. And some of those people, and I was in an elders meeting afterwards, and it was, this person showed up and this person showed up and this person showed up. And the elder I love the most at this church said, they're all people who left because, you're gay. And she said it in a loving way. And of course I said, well, that's a shame because I'm adorable. And I did the whole like Seven's not going to feel nothing thing. But the more I think about it, it's like, really? You couldn't have left because I said offensive shit during a sermon, or because I didn't call you when you were sick, or because I asked you for money? It's just because I like dudes. That's the most boring reason ever not to be in relationship with me. But then I wonder if I wouldn't have broken up with Harper anyhow, and I had just have to work through my own stuff on that. I don't know. I did want to ask something about Harper, if I may. Sure. That was a hand motion in case we would like to edit. And that's another one to put away that parenthetical. Sorry. Sarah, so part of what was up with Harper is I saw in her, she's probably on the bisexual side of the in our family. She clearly has something for, what's his butt? Liam? Is that his name? No. Connor?
I wanted to say Cooper.
Connor. God, the names in this movie, Riley, Sloane, Connor,
they're wonderful and beautiful because they're all different.
I'm opinionated today. I mean, there was this underlying thing too of, in a queer film, you're either queer, you're not even queer, you're either same gender loving or different gender loving. There was
definite bi erasure, if that's what you're trying to go for. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm going for.
Yes, and even when she came out, I noticed it, being very aware, as a bisexual person, being very aware of bi erasure, especially in queer centric spaces and media. They chose to use the word lesbian, which I felt like was a really, I'm going to go ahead and say disappointing choice, because I did not feel like it was authentic for Harper, because there wasn't space to hold like, well, I dated a man in high school and maybe I would date a man again, and I'm dating a woman right now and who knows who I might be with next. There was no space for that whatsoever. And
Right.
that was,
it's either up or down, left or right. Yeah.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, it also comes, she doesn't get to come out to her family. Her sister does it for her. And so it's really violent. She didn't get to choose that moment. And so for her to be like, no, I'm not, right? Like this kind of, right? That's when it happens. And so, yes,
it was, she's a lesbian.
Yes. And it's like, I'm not a lesbian. It's like, okay, and all the things. And so like, tensions were high for all of it. Nobody's acting their best self. No one is being authentic to who they are, maybe except for Abby, who is like, I'm disappointed and not entirely sure what's happening. But Sarah, I was like you. I was like, the first time I watched it last year, I was like, oh, they should have broken up. I wanted Abby to get with Aubreyplaza's character. And I was like, yes, this is great. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, oh, life is hard. And I looked at it, I guess, with just a little more grace and thought like, oh, this isn't okay. Like, I feel okay with all of this. What I had the actual problem was one, how they treated Jane, which is the third sister of these three sisters who just gets pushed aside by her parents for lots of different reasons, and her whole family, not just her parents. So one sister they were accomplished lawyers, and they are now doing kind of like Etsy curated gift baskets, and they're doing well.
Vaccine denier Gwyneth Paltrow, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, it gets picked up by Goop. Like, but what she says is that she's doing well. Like how she positions it, like is like she left and I think maybe I recognize this because I too left a job I was doing well in for a job I was more called to. Mm-hmm. And so she does the same thing, but the parents don't recognize it. And so Harper has like the one job that they kind of like push her out and around, and they're like, look at our daughter who's doing this very specific thing that in social settings looks good on paper or whatever, and yet she's really unhappy, and Jane is just sitting here being her best self, and they just keep pushing her to the side. And so like the second time I was like, okay, I get the Abby and Harper thing, relationships are hard, that's pretty transparent in that space, but like how we treat everyone else really got to me. And I think for me, as I looked at it through the lens of like, what does this have to teach the church? I think the church does that often to people. If you don't have the specific gifts that we are looking for to move from point A to point B. So if you are not, the soloist I need on Christmas Eve, or if you are not financially savvy in a way that helps us, plan next year's budget, so I need you on the committee or whatever it is. If you are just here to be curious about what God is doing in community, we often either put something on you or overlook you. And I'm wondering for either of you two, how do you see, I guess, that play out better in the churches that we either know or serve, or how might it help us better appreciate our people if we look at kind of everyone is fitting into maybe one of the three sisters?
Well, I do. It struck me, Stephanie, that Jane is also unbelievably talented, both between the book she writes and the painting, and that's this whole, sort of short arc is this painting that she did. And it is phenomenal, but because it doesn't fit the very centered view of what success is, it's like Jane's only contributions to the family are fixing the internet and the printer, which goes to what you're saying of
which she happily does.
She happily does, and those are the gifts that she brings. What it reminded me of, sort of the church at its best, is actually a conversation that I had very recently with a family member of mine who has Down syndrome, and he was telling me about how at his church he lights the candles. That is his job at church, is to light the candles. And we had this long conversation about how everybody needs a job at church. And for him, he is an acolyte and he takes that very seriously. and does do a great job and helps other people who are just learning how to do it. And for me, that is such a beautiful image of what the church could be, where everyone brings gifts and everyone participates. And there's no, no one is left out when it comes to participating in the church.
Well, and Jane's fully aware of the treatment she receives. And there's those faithful folk in congregations who show up in spite of it. They're told you belong even though, or you belong yet. And I see that, honestly, I've seen that with plenty of music ministers and musicians in the church, because oftentimes that's where gay men find their niche. Not all music directors are gay. Not all music directors are men. Not all music directors are gay men. But I've known plenty of them. And it's kind of this open secret. But we're not going to affirm it necessarily if we're not of that ilk, or we're not going to fight for it, or we're not going to support it, but we'll just acknowledge it. So like Jane's kind of wacky and crazy, and everybody listens to her crazy story. And by the way, one, she knows the story well enough to talk about it thoroughly, and it takes a long time to build a world. There were some, I'll come back to that. But like when she finally tells the story to the right person, to John's like into it and he gets it. Second, she's the one who says, I'm going to support the family with my book royalties. Like it's just a fact. And they all should have said, shut up, Jane, like they had plenty of times in there. 3, I don't know, she has the space and the time to do her own thing.
She knows her worth and she leans into it. And for me, I very much saw what I hope when all you pastors out there watching say, I'm going to go watch this movie and see what it's going to teach my church. Jane is the youngest, and I believe, and if not, we still treat her as if she's the youngest. And I saw how we treat the children of our church in the same way. Here's this very special thing that's very, please do the tech, please do the paper, please do this. And they do it joyfully. And we think that they don't know what we're doing to them, and they do. And yet they're probably the most well-adjusted because they have the least amount of church trauma and church thing, like that. If we just listen to them and see the paintings that they keep putting in front of our faces and listen to the stories they're telling in the books that they're putting out, then we will find new sources of revenue. We will find new sources of connection and collaboration. We'll find new friendships, and we will find a new space in which the church can grow and lead authentically and not try and play kind of catch up.
And the power structure will look different because of it, though. Like Dad, dear old Victor Garber, who's never going to get to play just somebody who's fun and kind. He always has to play the stick up his ass villain. Victor Garber's character, Ted. I was getting there. You literally posted it in the chat, and I'm looking right at it.
Okay.
Ted had to come around and be a good person, because Ted could have held on to the power in his family until he died, and made sure that the family protocol stayed the same forever. But thankfully, there was some change in that. I had a friend, Philip, who joined a church, and they immediately tried to get him on a committee. So he joined what they called hospitality or fellowship or whatever. And his first meeting, he said, I move that we disband the fellowship committee. And he kept threatening to join committees just to disband them. And he succeeded in doing like 3 of them. I think it's when he became an elder, they told him he couldn't do that anymore.
I love it.
He was 25, and he was like, your structure's stupid and it makes me sad. And look at this painting of Main Street I did.
Yeah. And I do think that there's a corollary there too with the church and the movie, that again, it's a Christmas movie. It's, an hour and a half long, all of those things, all of those caveats. But when there was apology, there didn't seem to be any action to follow up that apology. And so there's actually quite a bit of apologizing and a lot of forgiveness, but we, at least as viewers, we don't see any work that goes into that, up to and including the kids who apologize for causing a very serious legal issue for Abby. And they're just like, oh, we're sorry. And she says, thank you.
Yeah.
There's serious harm done and trauma and violence done, even within this hour and a half long movie, that is forgiven, but it's almost like it's cheap grace to use that in some ways. It feels a little bit like because there doesn't seem to always necessarily be actions that go along with that.
Well, it's no fun to watch people making amends and doing penitence.
Again, it's a Christmas movie. I get that. Yeah.
Well, and I wonder, like, that was going to be one of my questions tonight was like, yes, it's a Christmas movie. Yes, we know that it's, it wraps up neatly. And yet I wonder, part of what we've named here today is, that it's both problematic because it doesn't actually mirror what is real life, the real lived Christmas experience for so many people. But also the church, I think, tries to wrap up every Sunday in the same way, regardless of if it's Christmas or not. And what might we learn as a faith community writ large if we lean into the authenticity that is Christmas rather than try and make every worship a Christmas movie?
Oh, you mean make people feel uncomfortable and then let them leave uncomfortable?
Yeah. What does it look like to say Mary was a teen mother who, a refugee teen mom with an older, husband in this, or, like partner in this space. And there are, I'm always kind of bummed, and also like I get it, like that the messiness of birth is left out of the crushes that we like put out there, right? And now, do we want a birthy like nativity? Probably not, because that's a whole thing. But like, what does it look like if we talk about like the reality, the lived experience of who, I'm just gonna use Mary in this particular example, like how hard it must have been to, and how hard it is today for teen moms to get just healthcare and compensation and care and love in this world, especially from the church. How often are we saying, oh my goodness, you're pregnant, like you get told they're pregnant, and what does it look like for us to support you and love you, and not say, oh my goodness, we've got a teen mom in our midst.
Make that literally anyone who makes us uncomfortable or breaks the norm. Right?
Exactly. And I meant that like that's a very one specific part of this story, but like how many times do we turn people away and say, oh, we're full, sorry, for the fear that when they come in, they bring too many people with them, or they change the dynamic of what we're doing, or, whatever.
Well, I think in that way, even Harper and Abby's presence before Christmas Eve, before the fight, before any of that, their very presence there upsets the family dynamic. Even, I'm thinking about when they first get there and Harper says to her mom, oh, I thought you were going to make this room into an office. And she says, oh, only men need offices, dear. But their very presence there upsets the equilibrium, which, point A to point B leads to this drama and the fight that they have on Christmas Eve. And I think that, and there are many times in churches where the very presence of people changes those power dynamics, changes those structures, maybe even before they're put in positions of quote unquote power in the church structures that we already have. Their presence forces us to reckon with things, to reckon with the structures, the racism, the patriarchy, some of those things that the classism that our churches tend to perpetuate, even though we would say we're against them.
It's the power of hospitality, right? That like, what does it really look like to be hospitable as a community, as a person of faith, within our faith institution, like all of that. Like, had Mary Steenburgen, the mom, said, welcome, here you go, you know what I mean? Like, and not brought up, she's here because she is an orphan, right? Like that she's here not because of something, but that her presence is enough.
And it's welcome versus invitation. Abby is welcome. She's not invited.
So, yeah.
And she doesn't belong.
You can't belong if you're not invited.
Yeah. And so I think as we think about Christmas season, regardless of where you are serving, how you are serving, because we're all serving in some way in this grand life of ours, the focus of hospitality as kind of the guiding principle of who we are as a people of faith, I think can be the way in which we can experience both Advent and Christmas year round, for those of us that like our Christmas music in July. And to huh?
I like Advent music in July.
Sure.
About expectation.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I think that this movie lends well to the hospitality that I think we hope we all live into, and the reminder that people are going to show up on your doorstep at Christmas, and you have the choice whether or not to say, you know, I'm so glad you're here, or why are you here?
Well, as Tipper says to John, well, I wish I would have known you were coming, but since you're here, enjoy yourself. And the difference between that and like, oh, we are so glad you're here. Welcome. There's plenty. Make yourself at home. There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Girl, you are barking right up. We are, however, cognizant of the time. It's always good to have you talk to us, Sarah. I hope that you win the space race between Whitney and yourself.
May it be so.
May it be so. But I'm also going to tell Whitney I hope she wins, and I'll also tell Quadri I hope he wins, because then we all win if y'all are booking yourselves on the show a lot. We do, as you know, have a final question on our show. Spiff usually answers it because mine is this movie, Bible? And Spiff says it eloquently and elegantly.
Well, I ask it. We'll see how well I do. But Sarah, again, thank you for coming on. Always good to see you. And as you know, thank you for picking this movie, as I think it really helps us posture ourselves well into this season of preparation, and hospitality and family and chosen family and all of the things, and authenticity. And as we hold all of those things together, I'm curious what you see as, or within the Bible or its structures, its themes, verses, characters, myths, whatever. What within the Bible are you most reminded of in this movie?
So after this conversation, I kind of wish I would have gone down the theme of hospitality, because we touched on that at the end, and there's rich material here with this movie. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was 1 Samuel 16. When Samuel is looking for the next king, and God sends him to this family, and Samuel sees them and knows, like, he immediately knows who it should be, because Samuel and many of us look on outward appearances, right? Just like this family does. And God, of course, says to Samuel, this is 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, reading from the CEB, but the Lord said to Samuel, have no regard for his appearance or stature. I have not selected him. God does not look at things like humans do. Humans see only what is visible to the eyes, but the Lord sees into the heart. And what I love about this, and the redemption I would say that there is at the end of this movie, is when it is revealed, all of the things are revealed. Harper's secret is revealed. Sloane's secret is revealed. Jane even says, you guys always push me aside. And then she says, I don't have a secret, but I'm an ally.
Oh, you took, don't do that.
Excuse me?
You took what I was going to say. Don't do that.
Oh, sorry. We can talk about it in many ways. But so the family has this idea of what a perfect family looks like. It has an idea of what a political family looks like, of what a successful family looks like. And they're not allowed to deviate from that. And then at the end, the redemption comes when they realize that there is an abundance of love. And on the inside, not to be too cheesy, but on the inside, there's an abundance of love. And that is what wins in the end.
Amen. So Jane is wisdom. Jane is wisdom in Proverbs. Jane is outside the story and the center of the story. And again, I would seriously watch a sequel that's just Jane, like just that character, and actually her being treated nicer would be better. But yes, that line, I don't have any secrets, but I am an ally. I don't know if that's Holy Spirit. I don't know if that's Jesus Christ. I always like that wisdom is kind of like both. And you know, the Trinity has at least 4 members, probably 5, and I like that too. So I'm going to go with that nebulous response. Spiff?
Like it. I'm going to go with the parable of the talents. That the work, it's not about how much is given to you, but how you use it, that you show up in different spaces with the gifts that are given to you. No, granted, the parable of the talents is rich and deep and layered in lots of different ways, but I'm taking this particular verse of it. But there are the three workers, right? That one is given a lot, one's giving a little less, and one's given, kind of the least. And they all, the first two kind of make up or double their talents, and the third kind of puts it on a shelf. And I think all three of the sisters at any given point embody each one of those. There are things that we put up on the shelf to put away because maybe we don't like who has given, maybe we don't like it and we don't want to even touch it and deal with it, or maybe who has given it to us or who it benefits is not to our ethical standards either. And sometimes we have gifts that we can use in abundance and share freely. And sometimes you kind of get stuck in the middle being like, well, I've got more than they do and less than they do. And what does that mean in the context of the larger call that we all have placed? And we're all we're all workers, we're all even, we're all the sisters. And so for me, as I thought about that, I thought about how all these sisters show up both authentically and having to hide so much of themselves depending on the spaces that they are in, which generally have to do with the boss, the dad, or the mom, and less about who they are. So
fantastic. And we are all the sisters. Sara, thank you very, very much for being on our show for the fourth time and for talking Happiest Season with us. I've been calling it all sorts of things in my brain and in my notes, like Joyeux Noël and like wonderful time. But it is Happiest Season. You can watch it on a streaming platform, dear deuces, and we hope you will. And let us know what you think. You can email us at twoononeproject@gmail.com. Talk to us on Twitter. Follow us, smash the like, subscribe, share buttons, all that jazz. Also go to jeffwonrow.com for all of your stoles, paraments, frontals, altar accessories, really face masks even, for this never-ending endemic. And we will see you next week with another thrilling episode. Until then, I'm Arthur Stewart.
I'm Stephanie Kendall.
And that's Sara Nave Fisher. And we'll see you next week, everybody. Goodbye, deuces.
Get more 2-on-1 at twoononeproject.com.